What's up, everybody? This is Low Hanging Fruit. I'm Charlie Marlow. That is Brendan Schaefer, fresh off spring training, back in the St. Louis area. Brendan, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm just fantastic. I'm better than Sonny Gray's hamstring. What? Oh, too
Oh,
soon? Too soon?
well, no, I mean not too soon because let's start the show with that. I was
Okay.
going to begin with some pleasantries about
Oh,
your trip, but we'll get to that. Look,
we'll get
no,
to that.
no, let's get right to it. We'll talk your best meal and all that at the end. But
Hmm.
Sonny Gray, I mean, it's obviously the biggest story of camp. It's what everybody's talking about. So I'll just start with you. Give me your take, buddy.
My take is that it's not going to be the end of the world if Sonny Gray doesn't start on March 28th in Los Angeles against the Dodgers like he was supposed to. It's going to feel like the end of the world, but it doesn't have to be that. As long as he's starting by like mid April, I think the Cardinals are going to be okay. But this thing turning into something that's prolonged or something that's recurring, like it was for Sonny Gray back in 2022 when he was with the Twins, that would be the concern at this point. So it makes sense that the Cardinals want to take it slow. They want to get him back healthy and strong when he comes back. But there is that lingering thought in the back of your mind, Charlie, that in 2022, when he had a right hamstring issue in April, it did crop up again in September. So is this something that Sonny Gray is going to have to manage not only throughout this season, but throughout the 3 year contract with the Cardinals? Like those are all the thoughts kind of running through my mind as we get into this.
Yeah, I think when I saw the news, we're thinking, okay, we'll see what it is, and I think it's fair to say it's kind of in the middle. It is literally a mild hamstring strain, so it's not severe. It could have been better, and I think the way that Sonny Gray he discussed it in his media scrum that next day was, look, it's about the best news you could get for something. Now, clearly it'd be great if there was nothing, but he's like,
Right.
if you got a little something, this is about the best news that you could get. But I think when you looked at Twitter or if you were at the game covering it, whatever, but I mean, when you saw the news, you started to really realize how important Sonny Gray is to this rotation, obviously, but also to this team. And you're just thinking, man, what if they didn't have Sonny Gray for a large chunk of games in 2024? To me, it's really hard to think of the St. Louis Cardinals as a playoff team if Sonny Gray doesn't make, and I'm let's just say 25 starts. Whatever that number is. I think it's really hard. This is an obvious statement, but when you think, man, if you remove Sonny Gray from this rotation, all of a sudden, let's just say Miles Michaelis is your opening day starter, and then it's somebody like a Lynn or Gibson or Matz, and now you're depending on Zach Thompson from day one. You're like, ooh, man, that that doesn't feel too great.
No, not to have that be the case at the beginning of the season. And that's why, like, it's going to feel icky if that's your rotation to begin in Los Angeles and San Diego. But if Sonny Gray can pitch back on that homestand in St. Louis, it can be a temporary feeling. And that's got to be the hope, I think, for the Cardinals at this point. But you're right. Like when we talked last week and we kind of broke it down, what do you think the rotation's going to rank in Major League Baseball? Is it in that 10 to 15 range, or is that a little bit too optimistic? Maybe it's more, 16 to 20th in baseball in terms of the starting five. Take away Sonny Gray, though. How does it? There's no real upside in that group. There's a lot of solid guys you hope can be sturdy, but who's the guy kind of anchoring that unit at that point? It's really hard to say with confidence. Like Miles Michaelis has done it in various seasons, but he's coming off of a year in which he didn't pitch that well. He was susceptible to the defense behind him and just, didn't have a great year despite the fact that he went 200 innings. So you're talking at that point, I think maybe 21st to 25th in baseball in terms of the rotation, unless somebody like a Zach Thompson steps up and is one of your better starters, which he could do that, Charlie, but it's just one of those things that we haven't seen from him yet.
Yeah. And I don't even remember what I put the Cardinals rotation at last week, but I'm guessing it was somewhere 11 to 15 or 16 to 20,
We were on that
right in
line,
the
right?
middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just say it's right in the middle. We don't have to be perfect, but I agree with you. If you're saying it's right in the middle with an upside to creep towards, let's say, the top third of baseball with Sonny Gray, once you remove Sonny Gray, I agree. I think it's hard to put them anywhere but in the 20s right there. Now here's another aspect of this. And look, maybe he only misses, in that scrum, he said, if I miss one cycle, if I miss 2 turns of rotation, let's just say, let's be conservative. Let's say it's 3. Okay. Let's say he misses 3 turns. So he's back about midway through April. I do think, we're not thinking of, hey, this is Armageddon, but we've all looked at this schedule. It's really tough early. I do think the 2024 Cardinals are a team that would really benefit from a fast start.
Yeah.
What if that first 15 games, whatever it is, before you finally get a little bit of a break, you'd think against the Oakland A's, if you don't have Sonny Gray for your first 3 turns through the rotation, I mean, what if you start the year 5-10? I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but that's not too great for a team that needs some positivity early, I think.
If Sonny Gray is not starting in that Dodgers series, and it really doesn't seem like he's going to, I'll give my take on like specifically when I think he can get back in a minute. But if he's not in that first series, it's a 4-gamer in Los Angeles, which could be easy to forget. Right off the bat, you're playing arguably the best team on paper in baseball for 4 games. I mean, it would have been nice with Sonny Gray to squeak out a 2-2 in that 4-gamer. At this point, if you go 2-2 against the Dodgers without Sonny Gray, I feel like you hang the banner. Like that's going to be a really good start, but in the standings, it's just going to be so. And then I don't know what to make of the Padres. That series is going to be kind of fun to get into and talk about when we get there, just because they were also a team last year with a lot of expectations, fell short. Now Mike Schilt is their manager. So yeah, like it's going to put intense pressure on each and every game and each and every series that was going to be there anyway. But now we're going to be looking at it even more so through that microscope of like, hey, if you have that sort of start that happened to you last April, we know what that led to. That became the narrative of the bad start compounded, it snowballed on them. If you start that way again, what's to keep, a similar story from unfolding? That's going to be sort of the thought process. And for the players, man, I think there's a true tangible benefit to just having that fresh slate right now after they spent 5 months of last season chasing themselves and it didn't end up working out. Now you get the fresh slate, but what happens if that's gone within the first week or two? Like that, how does that affect the psyche of this team? Is it like here we go again? Or is it, no, we're confident in the group that we have? It's going to be a challenge.
And we both love the hashtag sign Trevor Bowers. And you knew, look, that was already coming. That was coming before the injury.
Yes.
And so I do find it funny. I know you have a nice rant against fans that we'll get to because you
Not
hate the
Bauer
fans.
related, by the way.
You hate the fans, apparently. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. We'll get to it, though. No, but of course, there's a natural reaction when you have an injury. Sign Blake Snell, sign Jordan Montgomery, sign Trevor Bauer. First of all, the Cardinals aren't going to do that, especially when this looks early on like it's not a big deal. I'll tell you what, this is interesting to me. I wonder if there would have been a real serious injury.
Yeah.
Would that like if you knew one of these starters was out for the year and you have a lot of guys with 1-year deals, all of a sudden would a Snell Montgomery trickle into the mix? I don't know. This is a hypothetical, but you knew. I love you fans. Believe me. I love the fans. I love the commenters. I love the hashtag sign Trevor Bauer. They got to sign Snell. They got to sign Montgomery. Come on, folks. The Cardinals. You knew they weren't doing that. Come on.
Yeah, especially not from what they term as a mild hamstring. And like part of the issue with the timing of this injury for Sonny Gray, and I put you retweeted my tweet where I did a little bit of research. I did some work on this. Back in 2022, but back in 2022, he had basically a very similar low-grade hamstring, is what the Twins called it, in a start that happened on April 16th. 3 weeks to the day later, he was back in the big leagues making a start on May 7th. And so you go, okay, 3 weeks, perfect. That's not that long. He can maybe start opening day. The problem was he was already built up from spring training that year. This year, he was only throwing like 2, maybe 3 innings at max in terms of his progression. So he misses the 3 weeks and then probably needs a couple of cycles through his own fake rotation to get up to like a 5-inning pitch count, and then he can join the Cardinals. So that's why I think that like April 10th to 15th range feels like a pretty decent bet in terms of what could happen if it mirrors what happened to Sonny Gray in previous seasons. That was the story I wanted to tell. I forget what the point you were making. Oh, it was the Jordan Montgomery stuff and sign a new guy. Yeah, if this was a longer injury, I think specifically if Gray had like a 3-month injury, and the news about like Blake Snell is willing to take like a Bellinger deal where it's short term but high money, maybe the Cardinals would have said, look, this is kind of our fork in the road. Do we decide to go for it and pretend that like Sonny Gray is the guy we trade for at the deadline if he's coming back in July, and just don't make a trade, but we sign the other guy now? Maybe they could have done that. But they haven't talked with Blake Snell, right? Like Derek Gould reported, Cardinals haven't really reached out to his camp or to Jordan Montgomery's camp in weeks, to where there's just no momentum. There doesn't seem to be a desire to have a deal there. But I did see a tweet, and I hate to bring this up because I didn't hear the original thing that was said by Buster Olney, but I saw a tweet that said that Olney was implying on a show recently that Montgomery's preference might be to go to a smaller market, and then says like Texas or St. Louis. And I'm thinking, Texas is like, that's like Dallas. That's not really a small market, but it feels like the way I read this is that Montgomery would like to go back to the Rangers. The Rangers maybe don't have it in the budget to pay what he's worth, and he's kind of sitting around. Boston might be wanting him, but does Jordan Montgomery go, I don't want to go to Boston? Like maybe St. Louis is going to throw me a bone, but I didn't think Montgomery would want to come back to St. Louis either. So I was kind of intrigued by that. But you're right. It was never in doubt that Cardinals fans would see any injury to anybody and go, got to sign somebody, even if it's like a 3-week injury that's not going to last beyond April.
And in that scrum, and by the way, good research you did about him coming back, and Sonny Gray talked about that. But he said at the end, the team sucked, and they were 20 games out. So it sounded like in theory he could have pitched again one of those years that he had that injury.
Yeah. So the deal was, it was April 16th to May 7th, and he was back good to go up until September 2nd. And then he had another hamstring thing, same leg, right leg, and didn't miss a start. Pitched again like September 8th, pitched again. September 19th had it happen again, and that was the one he was probably – I wasn't there for the scrum. I was driving back to Missouri. But I think that September 19th start is what he would have been talking about, where he probably could have started on the 26th or whatever. But at that point, it was like they're not in the playoff contention. Why push it? Just start getting ready for next year. I think that's probably what it was. But that does kind of go to show he had it in April, and then that same season had it in September. So it would benefit the Cardinals to make sure they can get out in front of this and make sure he's 100% ready to go before they push him back. I think he will be. I think he will be by the end of March, but the arm might lag behind because he's not currently built up as a pitcher. That's going to be what causes him to miss the first, week or two of the season.
You're a gambler. I'm a gambler. So if you had to set the over-under, okay, we already know he has the right hamstring strain right now.
Yep.
If you're hanging a line at a sports book on will Sonny Gray's right hamstring bark again in 2024, I was thinking, is the line 0.5 or is it 1.5? Are we thinking there's a chance actually that he's done after this and he has a full, let's say he misses 3 starts, and he has a full healthy 30 starts? Or are we saying, I think you got to put it at 1.5, and we'd be luckier if he only has it creep up again once and not twice? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say, does it creep up again once? I'd set the line at 0.5. Because again, in September of 22, when it crept up again, he could have just hit the IL and that would have been the one, but he didn't even miss a start with the tightness. And then it kind of so I would set it at 0.5, but I would also say, minus money on the over. It's probably going to happen, minus 150 odds on over, something like that, just because there's a bit of a history with this. But the good news is he knows how it feels, right? He felt the pull and said, why pitch through this? It's spring training. I need to get off the field. He's got enough experience with this particular injury that I think he knows when not to push it. So that might give you a little bit of solace, but it also might mean that on June 16th, he pitches an inning and goes, I shouldn't pitch again, because if I throw 4 more pitches, I might miss a month rather than miss a start. So that's where it's going to have to be something that I think is managed throughout the year and throughout the contract. This is just something that he is going to know, but he's a guy that knows his body super well. He does more meticulous arm care after every appearance than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, he's walking around with like a arm care machine attached to it. Looks like he's in a hospital, but it's just stuff that he does that he's always done to make sure his arm is in the right shape. So knowing that that's how he operates, I'm not super duper worried about it long term, but it is something that you do have to think about.
Do you think it's fair? I mean, it's certainly a fair discussion. So if I throw it out to you, and look, we're still in the off season technically. I mean, we have spring training games, but we're all kind of repackaging the same thoughts since the Cardinals sucked last year, which was midway through the year. And I wasn't obviously the only one to say this, but I think most people thought the Cardinals needed two front end guys.
Right.
They obviously got one with Sonny Gray. Now, for the 8,000th time, I'm not going to argue with myself. Once once they got Lynn and Gibson, I said, okay, you got three pitchers. It could in theory work. I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers. However, I did say you needed Gray and another front end guy. They didn't get that other front end guy. And now Gray is hurt. Is it safe to say, even right now, as we stand here early in March, that look, maybe they did not do enough? And let's also let's say it now, because again, when you remove Gray, you start to go, ugh. But if you'd have had, I understand a trade for Dylan Cease or Logan Gilbert. I understand how difficult that would have been. I'm not trying to say that's easy. But if you had another guy like that, then if that guy or Gray gets hurt, you feel a whole hell of a lot better.
I think you're 100% right. I want to play devil's advocate a little bit on the notion of that trade, which you fully acknowledge would have been difficult to make. I'm not even
Yes.
going to go as far as to say impossible, but let's walk through what that would have looked like. Because if we'll criticize, hey, the Cardinals really should have found another front end guy, a 1B to the 1A of Sonny, how would they have gone about doing that? Yes, you could always spend the money, but they spent $25 million on the two starters they got, and Gray's making whatever he's making for the next 3 years, an average of like 20 some odd million. So, like, to think they would have then added another, like, let's say instead of signing Gibson, they sign a Blake Snell, and now they've got two guys in their rotation that they're paying like $30 million a year for the next few years. It Because of their inability to develop pitching, that's why they're in this spot. Every year they're having to backfill the rotation with money and just patch it up and hope that eventually one of these guys comes through. But let's say they would have made a trade. They go get Dylan Cease. They're trading either Gorman or Donovan and Tink Hence and Graceffo. So now you're trading the prospects that could end up being that answer in terms of development. We don't know, but hopefully one of them does pan out. We find out this year that they do. But the part that I think is interesting is, like, whichever one is you want to say of Gorman, Donovan, the other one can play second base, but now you're kind of a little bit iffy on who's going to be the DH. And now with Tommy Edman is potentially going to miss the start of the year as well. You're down another position player, and the season hasn't even started yet. So, like, I can understand why the Cardinals would have been hesitant. On paper, it's like, oh, you've got two second basemen, Gorman, Donovan. Great. You can move one of them for an ace. I would understand that the season then happens and you go, oh, we don't have the depth we thought we did because guys get hurt. Now our lineup kind of isn't that top 5, top 10 unit that it has to be to contend with the way that we're built. So I could see both sides of that. And then I do lean toward the side of, there wasn't a trade made for Dylan Cease. So whatever the ask was, it may not have really been possible. But I can definitely understand that you look at where the Cardinals are now and their rotation, say they don't have enough. Do you want to know who I think the most important starter is on this team? Like, obviously Sonny Gray, they need him back healthy. Of the other ones, who would you peg that they're most reliant upon to have a good season of the other four?
Just off the top of my head, you asked me that question. I would
Yeah.
say Mats.
Matt's would be a lot of people's answer because he has good stuff, but the last 2 years has not been able to stay in the rotation and make 30 starts. Fair answer. I think it's unequivocally Lance Lynn because
Okay.
there's a world in which the Cardinals did get two front end guys, and it's if Lance Lynn bounces back to his pre-2023 numbers. If you look at him from 2019 to 2022, 3.5 ERA, 200 innings, 240 some odd strikeouts in 2019. 2020, he was one of the best pitchers in baseball when they had the COVID season, shortened season. He led the league in starts and innings and had a 3.3 ERA. The next year was an all-star 2.69 ERA, and then in 2022, a 3.99 ERA. I understand that now he's a couple years older than that, and that last year was a total bust. But if he can channel some of that and get back to being a 3.9, 3.8 ERA kind of guy like he was better than for like 5 years in a row before last year, like, I'm not saying that's likely. He might just have lost a tick or two of velocity. He's a fastball based guy. And so he's just not going to have the stuff on a week to week basis to do that again. But if he could, that's the world in which the Cardinals, I think, could be okay with a little bit of a rebound from Michaelis and Gibson being what he's been, even if Matz only throws 20 some odd starts because he has an injury mixed in there. I think Lance Lynn's the key. Now, am I predicting Lance Lynn to do all that? Not really. I think it's going to be a stretch, but that's the one that if he ends up going back to pre-2023 numbers, the rotation could be okay. But that's you're pinning that on a guy who's aging and what's he going to give you this year? We don't really know.
Yeah, and I like your answer as well. I answered Matt's because I'm already adding this to the fact that we're saying Sonny Gray is going to miss a small chunk of starts. Let's just say 3.
Over
And now
under,
I feel
would you
like
over under 23 and a half? How many starts does Gray make?
for the season,
Yeah,
23 and a half.
because this
I'd
would leave room for another little hammy thing too. You could still take the over potentially, but what do you think? 23 and a half.
I'd probably take the over. I think that's a good line though.
Narrowly, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I answered Matt's more because look at this. Even if Lance Lynn, let's say, is bad, and when I say bad, what if his ERA is in the fives?
Right.
But still, I think he's going to throw the 180 innings and strike some guys out. I just think that when this team said, they didn't just say it, through their actions, they said innings are essentially the most important thing to our team. It's
Yep.
innings. The fact that Sonny Gray's already hurt, Matz is the one other guy that you kind of worry about those innings. So that's where here's another guy. Look, I'm not betting on this, but Matz is also that type of guy. He's kind of like the Tyler O'Neill of pitchers,
Oh
where
no.
once every 4 or 5 years, he is going to have a season where he stays healthy, and he's actually really good. And by the way, I guarantee you that happens again at some point in his career. Steven Matz is going to throw 30 starts and going to be damn good. I just can't tell you what year it's going to be.
It's the exact year he had when the Cardinals signed him, right? Like he
Mhm.
had 29 starts and a 3.6 ERA, 3.8 ERA for Toronto, his 1 year in Toronto. And the Cardinals were like, 4 years, 40 million, let's go. And like that's the last time he did it. He's capable of it, but I mean, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. You don't know when it's going to come. I like that analogy, though. The Tyler O'Neill of pitching. By the way, the other day, Tyler O'Neill hit an absolute bomb out of the mini Fenway down in Florida. I mean, left the entire building and stole a base in that game as well. So we'll see what Tyler O'Neill comes up with for the Red Sox this year.
Don't you want him to have a good year? First of all, I like
Yeah,
him as a
I
person,
do.
by the way. I
Yeah, 100.
I don't
percent
really root Yeah, I don't really root against anyone, but I really do like Tyler O'Neill as a person. I feel bad for him because he's always hurt. I don't think that's necessarily well, could he train a little differently? Some guys also just get injured a lot. And then look, we don't need to get back into this. I don't think this situation was handled perfectly by either party. And we've all done 5,000 podcasts on this. But
Right.
hey, we root for storylines. And if Tyler O'Neill has a great year for Boston, I understand the relationship got to a point where it seemed like they just had to move on. But that's also look, that's both the Cardinals and Tyler O'Neill's fault. And look,
Yes.
change of scenery is also sometimes you got to do it. But if Tyler O'Neill starts off the season first couple of months going ham, we're all going to regurgitate this. Adolis Garcia, Randy Rosarena, even Lane Thomas a little bit, and
Oh
now
yeah.
Tyler O'Neill.
I think the conversation there is like, okay, change of scenery. What is it about the Cardinals that they can't change their scenery to accommodate some of these players and get the most out of them? I don't
Mhm.
have the answer to that, and I don't get paid to, right? Because I'm not in the front office for the St. Louis Cardinals. But for the people that are, that is at a certain point, the data stacks up, and you go, man, what do we got to do differently to whether it's relate to these players or put these players in positions to succeed? That's going to be the conversation if O'Neill does what we're kind of all expecting him to do if he's healthy. Yeah, I think it is interesting.
Okay, real quick, because you talked about a couple minutes ago the difficulty, which we all agree with, of making that big cease trade, whatever it was.
Yeah,
How about just this though? Look, the Cardinals were bold several years ago, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago. You get Arenado, different situation. Obviously, Rockies kind of had to get rid of him. Cardinals were
felt
in a
like
great
they had
spot
to
there.
anyway. Yeah,
Right. Goldie, you were bold. And now I feel like we all know the Cardinals are very conservative. It's how they do business. They run their team like a hedge fund. We all get that. But isn't this now maybe the time that you should be bold? Maybe you should switch it up? Is what you're doing working the last 2, 3 seasons? It doesn't seem like it is. And then going back to, hey, you were bold. You got 2 probable Hall of Fame position players. And now I feel like if you're not bold, if you don't take a shot, you're going to waste the last good years of those guys, Goldie and Arenado, for what? I mean, take a shot. Like, I understand being super conservative, but if they keep doing it, if it doesn't work, a year from now, at the end of 2025, we might say, you know what? They just wasted the last good years of Goldonado.
Well, I would say we'll know before then because neither of them will be on a team in 25
Mm-hmm.
if they screw it up this year. Like Goldie won't resign. Arenado will ask for a trade, or will the Dodgers will be knocking on the door so loudly that the Cardinals will just have to go, if we're not re-signing Goldie, it probably does make sense for us to trade him. And they'll all acquiesce, and that'll be what it is. So I think you're 100% right. But what does that look like? Because to the Cardinals, when they make moves, it's such a specific set of circumstances. That, the guy's got to want to be here. He's got to be genetically predisposed to coming to St. Louis, which is like, I get that makes it easier to do a deal from like an interpersonal standpoint. Like if I'm John Mozeliak and I call Sonny Gray and say, hey, am I too late? And it's like, what? We all knew he was signing Sonny Gray in October. Why is he not calling until mid-November? But he goes, no, you're not too late. And they have that conversation. Like it took Sonny Gray, like it was the obvious guy that was going to be a Cardinal. We all knew it before that phone call took place, right? Like that's the way the story came out. And so if it's taken that long to line up the stars for something we know is going to happen in our souls, what's it look like for the Cardinals to make a move that we don't see coming? And is John Mozeliak and his front office capable of doing that with the blessing from ownership? Because you can't just blame Mo. You can't just blame DeWitt. It's everybody in one unit that if you're saying just go for broke and sign Blake Snell, or just go for broke and make this Cease trade, like it's gotta have the influence and the blessing of everybody. Are they capable of doing a bold move that can see something like that through? We haven't seen it because Arenado wasn't bold. Goldschmidt wasn't bold. Those teams were trying to trade those guys, and the Cardinals were in a position financially and with the prospects that they had to give up, which wasn't much in either case, to be able to capitalize in a way that, like, it just felt so obvious. And they deserve credit for doing them. I'm not trying to discredit Mo's front office for making those deals. It's great that he was able to basically swindle both of those teams and the deals that he got for these players. But like what's the move that you have to finagle, and they're not basically offering themselves to you like, yeah, we want to trade this player, and it almost doesn't matter what we get back for it as long as you're going to pay him. That's what Arenado was. I know they gave up players, but come on, I mean, they didn't give up premium prospects. And when the deal was made, we all went, what are the Rockies doing? So the White Sox don't have to do that with a Dylan Cease, right? Like the Seattle Mariners don't have to do that with a Logan Gilbert. There's reason to keep those players and build around those players. But that's where it's like, all right, we have to make a trade that's not obviously going to be a win for us when we make it. But sometimes maybe you do have to do those things. I think that's a fair thing to wonder.
Okay. And I do want to move on to you hating the fans and
Okay.
really disliking Cardinal fans. We're going to get to that.
Okay, good.
But I had a thought right there at the end. We just saw that Zach Wheeler, and we knew Zach Wheeler's probably, going to stay with Philly.
Mm-hmm.
But how about this argument, though? Don't the Cardinals want to be good, not just for 2024, but beyond? Whatever happens with Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, I don't think both of them are going to be back in 2025. Maybe one of them, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is both, but I wouldn't bet on that. So like Montgomery, for example, I don't know if Monty even wants to come here, but if you made a great offer at this point, I think you could get him.
Yeah.
And so my argument would be, when I think about Jordan Montgomery, and by the way, this is also, my brain is now shifted to, hey, I know Sonny Gray's got a little pull in his hamstring. But to me, Jordan Montgomery, it doesn't seem like he's going to get that Aaron Nola contract.
Right.
It's probably going to be 5 years still, whatever it is. Doesn't feel like 7 anymore. Probably still in the AAV range of 23 to 25, whatever. Okay. But to me, Jordan Montgomery also makes a lot of sense, not just for 2024, but beyond 2024. Like, you still want to be good. I mean, are you just going to sign 1 year, 35-year-old pitchers for the rest of time?
No, I don't think they're going to do it for the rest of time. I think they're doing it for this specific season because it's a fulcrum point. It is a potential pivot point for the organization, hinging on what happens this year. Do they get back into contention and they can continue as was, Or do they need a mini reset that involves not re-signing Goldie, that involves considering reloading on the Arenado front by getting young players and shedding some of that money? Like, I think they're leaving themselves an out by signing 1-year pitchers and by operating with sort of a short-term thing. If this season goes terribly wrong, they've got an out that in 2025 they can be somewhat compelling with young players while also just shedding a lot of payroll and resetting as all the Bally Sports stuff sort of, weighs in the balance as well. Like, I think they would love to just continue on path in 2023 as a blip on the radar, and they're back to business of 85 to 90 wins every year. That's still within the realm of possibility here. But if you overcommit to the long-term stuff of a 3 to 5 year contract for Montgomery, along with Sonny Gray, it kind of precludes that reset from making sense, because now you're like, well, we're spending anyway. We kind of have to go in or out on this thing. And so that's kind of where I think they are by signing these guys to 1-year deals. It could be the stopgap. And then, God willing, one of these pitching prospects turns into a guy you can plug into the rotation in 2025 without having to spend $11 million plus for starting pitchers that fans are trying to replace Steven Matz in the rotation. He's making $11 million and he's the cheapest of the 5. So, like, they're paying everybody. You want to go sign a 6th guy to an $11 million plus AAV with Jordan Montgomery. The Cardinals look at that, and that's not even on their radar. Like, unless Sonny Gray is out for a long time, that's not something they would even begin to consider, because they'll go, well, what do you mean? We're paying 5 starters. So the sunk cost of, we've already had to put ourselves into this spot because we can't develop the guy making $700,000 for a few years and put him in our rotation and have him be effective. I think that's kind of where they are with the whole thing. And if this year, one of the two of Lynn or Gray is good, or not Gray, Lynn or Gibson is good, and they would say, all right, we'll bring him back on the option. We'll let the other go, and we can slide in a Tink Hens or a Graceffo or, whoever, Takoa Roby. Like, that would look like, okay, everything is business as usual, but they're leaving themselves that out of not having to overcommit to future dollars in a time where they don't know if it's going to be worth it to do, because they lost 90 games last year, and they might do it again this year if things go south.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think the fan base is pissed, and I just think all this conservatism talk, and it's not. First of all, we all know they have the money. They could absolutely sign Jordan Montgomery if they wanted to. If they want to just, I don't want to say the bad word. If they just want to kind of dink around and,
okay. I was like,
and
what
do
word?
this, I was actually going to say the P word, but my point is, like, this message, if you go, oh, okay, well, we're looking, no, that message is not going to resonate with Cardinal Nation if you don't make the playoffs in 2024. At some point, look, I understand their business model. I appreciate it, and it's worked for a long time, but it hasn't worked the last couple of years. And you can make the argument, I think I'm being fair, even some of those years they made the playoffs, there was a lot of luck involved there, and they didn't make deep runs. You had the 17-game winning streak. Look, you added pitching at the deadline. The pitching did great in some years, way better than anybody, us all included, expected with Happ and Lester. So, look, the 91 losses, that was the eye opener, but it has been a downward trend for about 5 years. We all know that. So at some point, also, the fan base gets sick and tired of hearing all of the, oh, we couldn't make it happen, and all of the different arbitrage and all that. Like, everybody on earth knows you could sign Jordan Montgomery. You absolutely could sign Jordan Montgomery. And you know what? If they don't do it, which they're not going to, so I don't even know why we're having this conversation, but guess what? If the Cardinals don't make the playoffs, I'm sorry, no excuses. Like, you screwed up again. You screwed up yet again. Your model no longer works.
Yeah, the emperor has no clothes. Like, this is going to be that. This is going to be that season where you said the phrase, we all see the downward trajectory for 5 years, and I think in the public we can connect those dots. The Cardinals would say, well, what do you mean? I mean, we made the playoffs here, we made it there, we might have missed here, but we've been pretty consistent. And hey, 23 was a blip. That wasn't what we do. Everything else was pretty good, winning seasons. But if it's another one, they won't be able to hide behind. Like, they could kind of wish this one away in the way they talk about it. So, yeah, we did some things wrong. We acknowledge that. We know that we need to do it differently. So we came in, and it doesn't look that different, though, right? With what the offseason they had some glaring need in starting pitching. What they do, they signed a couple back-end starters. They signed one guy that's an ace, but to a shorter contract. because it's less commitment over the next 5 to 7 years. They only signed the guy to 3. He's a great pitcher. It could work out, but that's kind of very Cardinals-y in the way that they went about it. Well, like, it's not really all that different. Last year, what'd you do? You had one glaring need. It was catcher, and you signed the most expensive catcher. We're like, we're good. We did it. So, yeah, it's not really that they've operated a whole lot differently. I do like the way they've gone about the bullpen this offseason. I think Riley O'Brien's going to be really good. We'll see if that helps the team. But if they lose 88 games this year, you won't be able to, with a straight face, as this organization, tell the public, like, no, we're still on the same trajectory. These 2 years are just a blip on the radar. It will be unavoidable to the public to say, hey, all of the criticism that we've said was really going on a downward trend for 5 or 6 years. Like, you can't possibly just will it away and say that it's not there if it happens again this year. That's why this year is such a potential pivot point for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, by the way, we get great comments here on YouTube, and follow Brendan as well, B Shafe Daily. Great comments. Now, of course, there's always that one negative one, and that's the one that sticks in your craw. And one guy said to me, he goes, Charlie, you're too sarcastic. He says, you're just always sarcastic. So, Brendan, that being said, why do you hate the fans? What's the thing? You said we got to talk about this.
Yeah, I said I had a little
go
rant.
after. Go ahead, go.
I got a little rant today, and this is not even about YouTube people. So maybe, if you're coming over from Twitter, I might be talking about you. But if you're a YouTube person exclusively, maybe this has nothing to do with you. But today, as we record this on, what day is it? Thursday? As we record this, the St. Louis Cardinals later today are going to play a game in the Grapefruit League against the Astros I think it's at Roger Dean Stadium. So what do the Cardinals do? They tweet out in the lineup, because that's what a good social team would do. And on the caption, they say, because pitcher Kyle Gibson will be taking the ball for the Cardinals today, they say, Gibby on the mound at Roger Dean Stadium. And so what does every comment and reply say? There's only one Gibby. There's this guy's not Gibby. Bob Gibson's the only Gibby. That doesn't look like Bob Gibson. Can we get a little perspective, please, Cardinals fans? I get it. Bob Gibson is the greatest. He is the best pitcher in Cardinals history, no doubt. I love me some Bob Gibson. Kyle Gibson is a 36-year-old man who also has the surname Gibson and has gone through his life in baseball. And you know what people have probably called him? Gibby. Because it's his freaking name. So
do you know that? Do you know that for sure?
When you go up to Ollie Marlow, you say, hey, Kyle Gibson, what do you think about? Well, with Gibby, people just call him Gibby. Like, it's just.
No, I get it.
I haven't said, hey, Kyle Gibson, what do you think about the fact that your name is Gibby and the Cardinals had a great player named Gibby? Does that make you feel uncomfortable? It'd be a ridiculous thing to ask to a person because it's his name. It's his name. And so I put out there, I said, the crusade where we can't call Kyle Gibson Gibby because God bless Bob Gibson. He's the best. But because this team had a guy named Gibson who also went by Gibby, and that's how everybody knows him, is not fair to Kyle Gibson. He's been Gibby his entire life, I imagine. And so this idea that, well, we can't call him, he's on the Cardinals now, you got to change your name, bud. I just don't even know where to begin with that.
Well, that was a good rant, and you're fired up.
I was a little fired up, more so than I should have been. I get it where it comes from, but you want to honor Bob Gibson, totally. But, like, people were like, well, have you asked him if it makes him uncomfortable that people call him Gibby now that he's on the Cardinals? I'm like, no, because that would be an unhinged thing to ask a person. I think it would be nice to say, hey, Kyle Gibson, Cardinals obviously had Bob Gibson. You guys have the same name. He was great. Did you ever meet him? Did you ever, like, you could play that angle. You're not going to go up to a human being and go, hey, man, there was a Gibby here before you. Are you sure? Are you sure you should keep going by Gibby? Isn't that a little disrespectful? That would be absolutely unhinged. So that's okay. That's my rant.
But hold on.
All right.
From what I know and what I've seen, Kyle Gibson is just an absolute class individual. So I do think you could ask him about this in a fun way.
In a fun way.
He'd give you a good answer. And he would probably he's like, man, dude, I'm a good pitcher, but Bob Gibson was the man. He's in the Hall of Fame. And by the way, I'm not trying to do the first take here thing, because believe me, I really don't care that much. But I'm kind of against you on this one, only because Bob Gibson is so legendary.
Right.
He is Gibby. Unfortunately, he also passed away. I think, like, we could have more fun with this if Gibby was still alive.
Yeah.
And at the end, hey, Gibby, is it okay if we call Kyle Gibson Gibby? He's like, yeah, it's fine. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just trying to think, like, what if
People
there
are
was another
emotional
guy?
about Bob Gibson, and rightfully so, because he's the greatest,
Right, but
right?
okay, like, I think it's because it's his name though. Like,
It's
if there
his
was another guy
name.
who came in and said, "Okay, my nickname's the Wizard," right? That's a little different because you have the Wizard here. Like, I totally get the argument. This dude has been called Gibby his whole life, Kyle Gibson, but Bob Gibson is just such an icon. How about this? Can we compromise? Can we call Kyle Gibson Gib or Gibber?
No, because his name is Gibby. That's what he goes by. Like, and you could call him whatever you want. In passing, other people talking about him, it's always Gibby. So that's my context clue of like, okay, people call this guy Gibby. That's what he's probably gone through his whole life in baseball with. And I don't think it's incumbent upon a 10-year, 13-year veteran of the league to go, well, I'm on the Cardinals now. I guess I have to change my name. I understand too, though, and people have made the point to me that like on Twitter as a Cardinal fan, it's different than whatever people call him in the clubhouse and in his personal life, because I'm not going to meet Bob Gibson or Kyle Gibson, and we're not going to have that sort of relation. And I get that, but it's just like the Wizard thing's a great example. If somebody else waltzed in here and was like, I'm a shortstop and I play good defense, so people have called me the Wizard in other places I've been. Can y'all call me the Wizard? And be like, well, that's never going to happen. That doesn't make any sense. But it's like, oh, this is the guy's name. Oh, what's your name? Kyle Gibson. Okay, Gibby. It's just a natural thing. It's not forced. It's not like we're forcing it because it's his name. So that's why I'm like, I don't know what you want the guy to do.
Okay. And again, I want everybody to know, I really don't care about this, but I do think it's fun to talk about.
It is
How
fun to
about
talk
this,
about.
though? How about this? Because you know how hockey players are. Everything is nicknames, right?
Yep.
So any Gibson's going to be Gibby, Gibber, whatever it is. How about this? You totally understand why Kyle Gibson's teammates would call him Gibby.
Yeah.
Is it fair? And by the way, again, this doesn't matter. Should the Cardinals official accounts, though, do it? I think that, is it fair in saying, look, we understand people are going to call him Gibby, but the Cardinals that are all about history,
right.
Should they not call him Gibby because there's only one Gibby? Is that a fair discussion point?
I think it's a fair discussion point and a fair question to ask. I don't think I come down on the same side of the aisle as you on this. But I can understand the question. But like Ollie Marmol is a voice of the team, right? So when he's talking to the media and there's cameras in his face and he's asked about Kyle Gibson and he says, well, Gibby did this, is it all that different? Because he's an official voice of the team too, right? That's kind of how and so like that's the person I've heard say it more than anybody is Ollie Marmol over the past 3 weeks. So I think, I knew this would be the reaction when I saw the tweet. And like, I thought it was fun, not because I wanted like, oh, let's, denigrate Bob Gibson in any way, but I also knew like Cardinals fans are going to have a problem with this. And to me, they shouldn't. There's no reason. It's just the guy's name. And like you said, Kyle Gibson, the best dude, he probably would have all the great things to say about Bob Gibson and very respectful and all that. So I'm like, I don't really think there's a problem here. And it's just, it's his name, Yeah. Matt Carpenter is Carp, right? Like I get it. There was a Chris Carpenter, but you know what? Everybody calls him Carp.
Or Marp.
Nobody calls him that. And but back in the day, I was like, oh yeah. Like I'll say my view on this has shifted maybe the more I had a conversation with Matt Carpenter. He said my shoes were nice. That was good. It's like,
What kind of shoes?
Well, they're like Nike Air Max. They're actually, he goes, Are those actually golf shoes? I'm like, yeah, they are. But I got them for Christmas. They're great. They were like a little bit purple. So I think he was like, oh, TCU, kind of maybe that connection. But anyway, like I even look back, I was like, I probably have said Marp on Twitter in passing because it's kind of funny. But I think most of the time I'm calling him Carp because that's just his name. And yeah, there's a Chris Carpenter who was, on the Cardinals too. But that doesn't mean like we got to come up with something else to call you. Like, I don't know. It's just his name, like I think it's a Twitter thing that I know I'm taking too far, but it also, like you said, is fun to talk about. So I like to kind of mix it up.
Okay. And by the way, I do think this is interesting. And you brought up a different point to build off. And by the way, Matt Carpenter, great Cardinal, will be a Cardinals Hall of Famer. Chris Carpenter, even greater Cardinals Hall of Famer. If healthy, Chris Carpenter probably would have been a baseball Hall of Famer if things went differently earlier in his career. But I do think there's a difference because those guys are great Cardinals, but they're not on the Mount Rushmore. There's the Mount Rushmore of Cardinals, and whoever that is, obviously Stan, Gibby. Then it gets tough because you have Lou Brock, Albert, Ozzie, so that's 5, and I'm probably missing people. But my point is, Gibby's different, man. Gibby's just different. I'm sorry, Bob Gibson. We've all met him. He was just different, man. Not just on the mound, his presence, his demeanor, the stories.
100%.
He's a freaking icon. So, look, I don't usually side with Cardinals Nation on stuff like this, but I kind of side with them on this.
If your argument is the official account doing the Gibby thing because maybe kind of knowing tongue in cheek what's going to happen, and that maybe there's no need for that, I could get behind going, all right, I can see. I don't have an issue with it personally, but if it's like the official arm of the team, like you said, you can avoid it simply by just. But it's also the guy's name. It's a current pitcher that's on your team that you're like, hey, this is our guy. So I can understand your side of it, but I did have to rant about it because I thought it was kind of fun. I thought it was, and I also was not sure. I didn't tell you ahead of time what we were going to talk about. So I thought Charlie's probably going to see the other side of this, and you do, and that's fine.
But hold on a second. To be fair, hold on. I did see your tweet.
Yeah.
And right when you said that, I knew you were going to want to talk about it.
Okay.
And look, I always say exactly how I feel. Like, honestly, on all the podcasts I do, I probably agree with folks too much. Like, sometimes it's more interesting for you and I to debate or whatever it is.
Right.
This is one I would never do the first take thing where I just take the other side just for content.
Yeah, you're not faking this. Right.
Right. I think this is a tweener, but I don't really care, folks, everybody, just so you know. But I am on the other side of this one from you slightly.
You want people to go up to Kyle Gibson and go, hey, K Gib, what's up, Gib K? What's up, brother?
How about okay, how about a compromise?
No.
How about no, this is good.
Okay,
I just thought of this.
Got it.
K Gibby. Here's why. For pitchers, K's strikeouts.
Yeah, sure.
And it's still Gibby's in there.
Yeah.
It makes sense. You got one Gibby and you got K Gibby.
Anytime you have to go, how about to like force a nickname upon somebody, it's probably not going to work. But I can get behind the clubhouse calling him Gibby and the Cardinals official account going, all right, is this worth it? Is this worth what it's going to make people feel? Because we want people to get behind Kyle Gibson and not give him a reason to go, how dare they call him Gibby because we had a Gibby. I can see it. I can see both sides. It's fun. It's definitely fun. I already know the comments are gonna. I mean, I'm ready for it. The comments are gonna go, this Brendan Schaefer sucks. there's only one Gibby, Charlie Marlow for life. But like you said, we got to be honest about what we think about a thing, and I think we both did that here.
All right, what we'll do also. So the second we end here, which is going to be in about 10 minutes, folks, I promise. We went 15 minutes on Gibby, but that was just it happened.
They'll be able to see how long the video is. You don't have to tell them this part.
I know you're right. What I'm saying is, I'm going to quickly edit this, put it out YouTube. I'll wait on podcasts a little bit, but I'm gonna edit this chunk about just Gibby, and I'm gonna put it right on Twitter for people to watch on Twitter. Okay, so again, you said don't say this, but I'm going to. Let's just go about 10 more minutes. So empty your notebook. Edmund, what's going on? Lance Lynn, what's going on? And then, like I said, if you want to talk for the next 10 minutes about all of your spring training sights and sounds, just go ahead.
Well, ask me a more pointed question about like my spring training meal or two at the end.
Okay.
Lance Lynn, I don't think there's really anything going on other than Ollie Marmol has continued to describe that like he kind of prefers to ramp up on the backfields and then get into Grapefruit League games. I don't think he's really behind at all. We'll see, obviously, when he gets out there how many pitches he's throwing, but I think he'll be okay. Steven Matt's kind of a similar thing, but I think they preferred for him to be ramping up on the backfields. He's now gotten into a Grapefruit League game through a good inning. Pitch count wise, he might be a tick off, but I don't think it's going to be anything that if he's the fourth or fifth guy in the rotation to begin the year, he should be just fine. Tommy Edmonds, a different situation though. Again, I'm back in Missouri now, but I saw that reporters yesterday were kind of hearing from the Cardinals. They talked about Tommy Edmonds, that they basically shut him down for a brief period of time from the baseball activity that he was doing. and now he's kind of back as of yesterday to ground zero of hitting off a tee and playing catch. Whereas he had advanced to like doing drills defensively and throwing from the outfield, not at full strength, but he was doing it. And hitting wise from one side of the plate, I think he was even maybe doing coach pitch. The others just BP. The other side of the plate, more like little drills, front toss and stuff like that to try and get up to speed. From I think the right side is where he was behind. It really doesn't matter anymore because they stopped him completely, and now he's got to have to sort of restart that process. And my question would be like, all right, if this guy, we knew last year he had wrist issues, and then he tries to rehab it all off season and comes back and is still kind of having some pain, wouldn't that be the sign of like, shoot, he's got to have a surgery or something to fix it? Well, he had the surgery and is still kind of, you know what I mean? Is still kind of having those issues. So is it just a matter of, it's a minor thing, he'll continue to kind of have some discomfort until he's back to full strength? Or is it like, does it devolve into like what's going on here at some point if they have to then set him back again? I'm a little bit like I phrased it yesterday on the radio between Sonny Gray and Edman. I think Edman could be back first because for Gray, it almost feels like it has to be mid-April because his arm is not going to be built up even when the hamstring is ready. But worst case scenario, I'm more nervous about Tommy Edman because I think there's room for him to be out for longer if they can't figure out, why is he still having discomfort?
Gotcha. Okay. Best meal? Did you make it to the beach? Or we can also throw in back to baseball. A guy we're not talking about maybe that impressed you. Just kind of, what do you got?
I mean, we're talking about Riley O'Brien, but I would put it like 98% he's on this team, barring something crazy. He's been awesome and is going to be a good addition to where like I think he can work his way into like a legit setup role where they trust him in 7th, 8th inning situations. Along with the other guys that they have out there. He throws like 98, 90, like he's good. He's going to be a good one. Best meal, we went to Captain Charlie's Reef Grill, we went 3 times. Really good seafood place. We did go to Guanabana's, right? Because it's just like a great view out there at the Tiki Bar. I don't think we got like an appetizer there, but didn't eat. But just a really great view on the water.
Rocco's Tacos?
I did not go to Rocco's Tacos, and here's why. It's kind of off the beaten path. I was staying in Abacoa, so I didn't really have to leave and go down, to PGA or even further to West Palm. I didn't go to West Palm at all, downtown West Palm the whole time I was there because it's just far. And right there in Abacoa is a place called Taco Shack that is fantastic with a great happy hour. And I was like, I could go here every day. And then the other one, obviously, Crux Coffee is fantastic, but the Cuban restaurant Copacabana. Not John Kruk. The Cuban restaurant Copacabana there in Abacoa maybe was my best overall meal because I just left that place like, oh, this was really good. And so that's kind of my Mount Rushmore, if you will, of spots down in Jupiter.
All right.
And I did make it to the beach a couple times.
Nice. And you had the family down there, so I'm sure that was fun. Well.
Toward the end.
But you're working.
I was working, but it was good to be able to. The first 2 weeks, no wife, no son. I hadn't been apart from him for that 2 weeks ever before. And so he was down and he went to the beach like almost every day, but I went like a couple times with them and it was good. It was a lot of fun.
So, okay, let's end it like this. What if your son was watching the game and Kyle Gibson was pitching and he pointed to the screen and said, Gibby, Gibby? Would you correct him?
Yeah, we're going to have a talk about that, obviously. I can't allow that in my household. I'm sorry.
All right. Let's end on that. You know what? Hey, we're dang close to an hour.
You got to clip that together too when you post it on Twitter. End it with that. Like that's more work. That's more work than I really want to do. It's another. I
really like a nice, easy edit. Clean. I might. You know what?
It wouldn't be hard. It wouldn't be hard because you could just cut out the entire middle. It would take I bet 40 extra seconds of your time.
I might do that. I actually probably should do that. All right. Brendan, great stuff. And Thursdays feel good right now, but folks, once the season starts, we'll probably do more than one per week. We'll figure out a schedule. We're
going to have to hit them over the head with us to get them to know that this is a thing. You know what I mean? Like once people know this is a thing, I think they'll enjoy it. But it's still a new venture right now. So,
but I think people are enjoying it. Again,
I think so.
Our first one, to me, and this is boring, but on YouTube, it's all about the title. That first one was when Goldie wasn't. The news was Goldie isn't going to be extended, so there were some news elements, and you throw that in the title, and all of a sudden it got double the views. So I do think right now Sonny Gray is very
But
talkable.
how do you do it? We'll do this behind the curtain on the air. How do you do it? Is it like, do you title it like how many starts will Sonny Gray make? Or do you target one specific element that we do talk about? It's not clickbait because we talk about it, but like what's the Sonny Gray angle that you'll go with? That's what I'm fascinated to find out.
I wouldn't say fascinated is the right word, but
I can't wait to see because
something like
I'll judge it.
let's all overreact to Sonny Gray, something like that. And by the way, if it doesn't do well, I change the title an
Oh
hour in.
yeah.
So we'll
Is the Cardinals season over because Sonny Gray has a hamstring? No, I
something
wouldn't go
like
that
that.
far. That's very clickbaity. Jim McCann Hayes would be very upset if you made that the
Yeah,
title.
he never does that, right? Himself.
I'll see him
Um,
tomorrow. I'll be on the show.
all right. All right. Well, hey, good stuff, Brendan Schaefer. Be Shafe Daily. Check him out on YouTube here and on Twitter. Thank you guys for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe, share the show, share the channel, put it in your group texts, put it on your social media, and get the word out. We're counting on you. We appreciate you. Keep the comments coming, even if it's hashtag sign Trevor Bauer and Charlie, you're way too sarcastic. Okay? Brendan,
Or
great job, buddy.
or complaining that I call him Gibby. All right, see you guys.
See ya.